Okay, so on this example, the first part's just, listing the possible rational solutions. And so you did that here by putting all the multiples of 7 divided by all the possible multiples of 8. And that's where you got part B. Well, that's where you got answer B. So then part B is go ahead and start plugging these in. And it looks like you chose, you got to 1/2 and that worked for you. And so I'm going to go ahead and try that. And then we'll see what we have left to work with and see how we find the rest of the solutions down here. So let's see, we're going to use 1/2. And so using synthetic division, I take the coefficients. So let's see, 8, 50, -41, and 7. So what I'm going to do here is you drop the first one, and then you multiply it by 1/2, which is 4. Add that together, which is 54. Multiply that, so 1/2 of 54 would be 27. 27 and -41 would add up to -14. -14 times 1/2 would give you -7, remainder 0. And that's how we know that 1/2 is one of my solutions. Now, if I would have used, these are the correct answers down here for part C. If I would have used 1/4 or -7, all those would be good too. All those answers would work also. So let me kind of really hammer home what's going on here. So what you've really done, what synthetic division really does, is it factors the problem. So what we have left here is you got to drop it down by a power. So our x cubed is now, I'm going to put them back with the coefficients here. Now that's going to become 8x squared, and then that'll be plus 54x, and then that'll be minus 14. And what we did was basically that solution we figured out right there, 1/2 x. As a factor, you can write it a couple different ways. I'm going to write it as 2x minus 1, okay? And where I'm getting that from is because if I set that equal to 0 and solve, if I take 2x minus 1, set that equal to 0, and solve that, I would add 1, and then divide by 2, and that's where the 1/2 is coming from. That's where the 1/2 is at. And so see, if I plug in 1/2 to this equation right here, this would go to 0. If I plug in 1/2, this goes to 0. This goes to some number, but it won't really matter because when you multiply anything by 0, the whole thing's going to collapse down to 0. Okay, so you found the first solution. Now what you're trying to do is figure out what else can I do with this, okay? And so you can do the quadratic formula if you want. Some of them you will have to. This one you don't have to, so we won't. But just be aware that some of them won't be factorable and that you do have to do the quadratic formula. So what you want to do is, remember, you're multiplying this together, trying to figure out, if you could figure out what makes this equal 0 right here, then this would collapse it into 0 also. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to say 8x squared plus 54x minus 14. What would make that equal 0? So I'm kind of asking myself that, and so I set it equal to 0. What I want you to notice first off is that 8, 54, and 14 are all divisible by 2. So to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and divide everything by 2. It's just going to make my numbers a little bit smaller. So now I'm left with 4x squared plus 27x minus 7 equals 0. Now at this point, if you really want to, you can continue to try the synthetic division if you really want to. Some students might like that. But at this point, typically it's either factorable or you do the quadratic formula. And so if you want to do quadratic, there's no problem with that. I'm going to go ahead and see if we can factor this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do guess and check. I've also done the method where you kind of multiply the edges together and then split the middle. If you're comfortable with that, go ahead and do that. But I'm going to go ahead and just do guess and check here. So I'm going to guess that it's going to be a 4x and a 1x to get me that 4x squared, right? Then what I got to do is figure out, okay, what multiplies to give me -7, but then the inner and the outer has to add up to that 27x right there. So it's gonna have to be positive and -1. It's just I'm sorry, positive positive 7 and negative 1. It's just a matter of where do I put them. And so I'm probably going to put the minus 1 here and put the plus 7 here. And so what you can see is this would give me 28x, and this would give me a minus 1x, which then that adds up to that 27x in the middle. So I know I did it correctly. And so then the last thing you do is you take each one of these and set them equal to 0 and solve, and then you have all your solutions. So let's see, we'll take 4x minus 1, set that equal to 0, add 1, and then we'll go ahead and divide by 4. And we get x equals 1/4, and you can see that that's one of my solutions. And then the other one's pretty simple, x plus 7, set that equal to 0, subtract by 7 on both sides. So we get x equals negative 7, and then that's the third solution right there, okay? So, if you have a couple more of these you want to see worked out, feel free to send them.